said, my name's Alyssa Lopez. I'm an educator with Caliber Beauty. Um, and like he I'm also a finalist for BTC, One Shot Awards. And yeah, today we're going to be doing a shag. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and just put them down and I'm happy to answer any questions. So today, just to get it started, I started with her fringe already, but I'm still going to go over the sectioning and everything. So, and let me know if I need to speak up. So, just to start off the sectioning, I like to section about a couple inches from the hairline up here. Once I start sectioning off the fringe, it's like a couple inches from the hairline, but there's really no rule for this. You can kind of just gauge this depending on the density of your client's hair. So if they say they have really thin hair, you can take that section a little further back, which for the shags, the fringe sectioning is going to be all the way back here anyway. But just to start the shorter pieces in the front, you do want to make that little triangle, right? Then I take that line all the way down to where the recession is. Then, so today we're trying to go for bangs that are going to sit just right above her eyebrow. So since I already got that side done, I'm going to go ahead and just connect the other side. Just making sure it's nice and wet. Whenever you use a feathered razor, like ours, for example, you want to make sure the hair is always wet. So once you start cutting using that blade on dry hair, you're going to tend to damage the hair and break it a little bit more than if it were wet. Because once the hair is wet, it's going to be a lot stronger and less susceptible to that kind of damage from a blade. So right now, I'm taking a subsection and I'm just following her natural hairline, right? So it goes a little bit back, right, at an angle. So I'm just going to take about 1/2 inch of a subsection, just move that hair out of the way. And now I'm going to pull it forward. And even though I'm pulling the bangs straight forward, technically I'm over directing since we took that section a little bit at a diagonal back. Pulling it forward, you're going to see already the hair up here. It's going to start looking like it's being over directed to the middle, when really we're just pulling it out forward. Just waiting to see where my guide is over here on the other side. And I'm just going to glide the blade all the way straight across. And I'm just going to keep working my way up. Taking another 1/2 inch subsection. I'm just going to pull it straight forward. Making sure I can see the previous section. Pull my fingers down. And the reason I'm cutting her fringe this way and these horizontal subsections is because she does have pretty dense hair. So cutting along with the blade is going to help create a lot of internal layers. Oh my God, I just realized how close it is. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that you can actually see what I'm doing. I'm sorry, I won't get so close anymore.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Alyssa, you don't need to worry about your camera. Your camera is great. I'll do all of the zooming, okay?
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry, I jump scared myself right now. Right, so cutting it this way is going to help create a lot more internal layers. So it's going to create more softness around the ends. However, if I were to be doing this style on somebody with thinner hair, then I would want to start taking it that traditional way and pulling everything to the middle and then cutting in a straight line, bringing everything to the center, right? That's going to help create more weight as the bangs go down. But since we really don't have to worry so much about weight with her hair, I'm more concerned that it would be too heavy if I were to pull everything to the center like this, right? Because then it's just going to create more work for me to go back into to start layering. So instead, just to avoid all of that extra work and extra time, I'm just taking horizontal sections this way and then just gliding my blade through it. If we were to be cutting straight across with shears, then that would create more weight because we're creating that really straight line across the bangs. So when it sits, it's going to be a lot heavier when it goes down. The thing that's really nice about a feather razor is that it's going to create a lot of like tiny little jagged layers. So it's not really a straight line, but because of the weight that we're creating, that's nice and light and feathery, that's going to help encourage the hair to start flipping to the side. So like literally all I'm doing is just combing it and the layers are pushing the rest of the hair to the side. Since we are technically over directing a little bit because of the way I'm taking that section, those shorter pieces are going to start pushing those longer pieces outward. And again, I'm making sure that I'm not pulling the hair down her forehead, right? If you really want a better reference on how to hold the hair out, you can just use the comb and place it. And then you can see this is where you want to have the hair resting when you're cutting it. Not down here, but up here is going to give you better control and a better visual of how those layers are going to rest. And then as I get closer, those lines are going to start shifting a little bit. And eventually at the end, I'm going to start following this line right here. You can see that. Right when it starts angling toward the recession, eventually that's how we're going to end up with our sectioning. So now that I'm in the last part, you can kind of see I'm starting to take that diagonal a little more forward. Still making sure that I'm over directing it a little more towards the center. And if you wanted like more longer curtain bangs that get a lot more like gradually longer towards the ends, then at that point you can start over directing it a lot more to the other side.
The razor that Alyssa is using is the H3 texture razor from Caliber.
It's third. And I really love, this is honestly what really made me fall in love with a lot of Caliber's products, because the ones I used to use like from school, they were okay, but this one especially just has a little more weight to it, so that when I'm cutting the hair with it, it's really doing most of the work because of the weight. I'm just kind of guiding it where I'm cutting, if that makes sense. So right now, they're looking really cute right now. And while they're wet, you know, they look really good, but the bangs still aren't finished. So I still like to go in once it's all dry and see if there's still any little like really dense pieces I want to break up. So for now, we're finished with that. I'm gonna move on to the side. And I'm not trying to make the side too short and textured in the front. I still want to see like, I want the layers on the side to kind of help. I want them to blend in to the fringe in the front. And I still want them to help encourage that little shaggy flip that you see on the sides. So I'm not going to go too short. Again, making sure that I can see the hairline. And I'm going to go a diagonal back, pull that forward. And this is where you can gauge where you want to see those shorter layers to start. So I want to see these start right about the cheekbone. Even though it's going to look like I'm cutting it disconnected, it's all going to blend together, especially once I get to the top section. Just going to start pulling it forward because I do want it to get really gradually like longer. And since I do want the hair to stay as long as possible, everything's going to get over directed forward. And honestly, I feel like whenever I do haircuts with this feather razor, it just goes way faster. Not that I, not that there's anything wrong with cutting with shears, but if you're really like pressed for time, the learning how to utilize the feather razor is really gonna help maximize your efficiency. Again, pulling everything forward. And you don't want to make your sections too thick. You still want the subsections to be thin enough that you can see your previous guide that you just cut. And so for this sectioning, I'm making sure that I'm keeping it sectioned right behind the ear. And I'm separating the top section. So just like we stopped the fringe section right around the recession, I took that line straight across all the way around the head. And then we cut the back panels in half. And since we're trying to maintain as much length as possible, I'm sectioning off everything under the occipital because this is going to be where all the weight and the length is going to lay. So we're leaving that alone. Everything else is going to be layered, connecting to the bangs, and still is going to be connected to our length in the back. So now that we have this section cut, this is where you can start customizing it a little bit. If you feel like it still like looks really dense, what I like to do is taking a diagonal forward section like that. Combing it back slightly. And you see there's a lot of density right here that I want to break up. So I'm just going to start using my feather bracer to break it up a little bit. Definitely don't want to go more than maybe like 3 or 4 inches to the scalp, because then it's going to create a little, like, more disconnection than you want. So you still want to start as close to the end as possible. But if it's really that dense, you just want to make sure that you keep continuing that motion in other sections, so that way those layers are still a little bit connected. And it's just going to make the ends move a lot softer. You can see as I'm pushing it forward, and I'm getting a nice little shape already. Right. So now we're going to connect everything to the top. And now tilt your head down. So now for this section, I'm going to start right in the middle. I'm going to take a vertical section going forward. I'm going to pull that straight up. Make sure you can see. There we go. Okay. Let's see, I have it pulled straight up. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of the bangs right at the very top point of that fringe section. I'm going to pull it forward and I'm going to grab it. Okay. Making sure I can see that. So now the top point of that fringe section, that's going to be my guide for the rest of the layers on top. Okay. I'm going to start angling it forward slightly. I'm going to wait for it to drop. You can see it drop right there. And I'm just going to take the blade. I'm just going to start gliding it up. So again, doing it this way is going to help maintain more length as I get to the back. Now, if we were doing this on shorter hair, like maybe if her hair was like around her shoulders, then what you could do is start taking it slightly straight. But since we're trying to maintain more length, we're going a little bit at a diagonal angle. Okay. And take another vertical section right next to it. And I'm combing that subsection into that first one we took. Okay. I want to make sure it's thin enough that I can actually see my guide. So I'm just going to take a little bit off. And if you're worried about losing your guide, you still have your guide right here where the bangs are. Okay. So I can see where that hair is dropping. And combing that in to our first section. Make sure I can see where my guide is. And the reason I'm pulling those next sections into the first section, so really it's going to look like this, right? Everything is going to get fed into the middle. That is going to help create that longer little wispy layers on the sides. If I were to take everything at a 90 all the way around, then the shape is going to be a lot more consistent. Whereas this over direction is going to help keep the layers nice and long as we get out to the side. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I'm trying to be as thorough as I can.
No, you're doing great. Questions we've had, you've answered in the flow of everything else.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. So pulling it forward like this, you can already start to see that shape forming. Almost done. And if you're still new at this technique, I would probably recommend doing the top second after the bangs. That way you can start connecting the sides to it a lot better. Since I literally do this every day, I already kind of know more or less where those layers are going to end anyway. So I would strongly recommend starting with the bangs and then starting with those top sections. So you can already see those layers are starting to give it that little shaggy look.
Do you have any product in the hair other than water?
Honestly, the only thing I use with my water, I mix a little bit of Reusel's hair tonic into my water. This is supposed to help kind of clean the shears and blades as you're cutting it. Because other like cutting aids I've used, I feel like they leave like a weird residue on the shears. But this stuff from Reusel actually like the blades feel like really nice and smooth. It's like a tiny bit oily, so I feel like it oils them at the same time a little bit, and it also makes the hair like really soft. And especially like for the razor, it gives it a nice like slippery like surface, I guess, for it to glide a lot better through. And it detangles the hair really well too. So I usually just put like just a couple drops of this in my water. And as I'm doing this sectioning, I do want to make sure, since I am using my right hand, I want to make sure I'm starting on the right side of the hair. Since I am over directing it this way, it's going to be super uncomfortable starting up here. Since I'm cutting at an angle, this just makes more sense cutting it on this side. So even though on this side, when I'm working on that side, I want to be on the other side. So that way I can catch the hair with my razor as I'm holding it. So now that I'm on this side, I'm still going to stay on this side.
So essentially, you're always cutting short to long then.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You can try the other way, but you're probably going to get carpal tunnel faster.
When you're starting to use a razor, at least for me, it was like I was always cutting under my fingers instead of above them, so I could help keep the tension, which is going to help the razor cut the hair. So these are all great tips that you may not think about if you don't use a razor very often, or if you've never used a razor.
Exactly. It really just depends, I guess, like on gravity, I guess. So usually the blade sometimes you can go underneath, but you do need that tension from your fingers anyway to hold the hair. I mean, I don't think I ever use a razor under my fingers. It's always going to be on the other side, if that makes sense. You can do the same technique with shears, like say if for whatever reason I don't have my shears, or maybe if I really one second, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's good. All right, start like this, please. Can you just give her?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Go on time. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, everybody. So, like I was saying, if you were working on somebody who had maybe even denser hair, you can use the same technique using your fingers, holding the tension on the hair. And you can do the same technique with shears. Okay, making sure I'm holding that excess length, seeing where my guide is. And this is going to give me like chunkier layers as I go through it. But for her hair, I feel like the razor is just working a lot better. So I don't want to create too much like disconnection with those internal layers. The shears in a way give me a little bit more control. So even like on really fine hair, I'll use the shears instead of a razor, especially if I feel like the thin hair might be a little more vulnerable to a blade, like if the hair is really processed. But with her hair, I definitely want to create a little more of a consistent line. So that's why I'm using the razor today. And making sure that I'm pushing it into that first section in the middle, just like with the bangs. So really the idea with the shag is that everything is going to get pulled to the center of her face and her head, right? Even with the bangs, if we were to cut using like just one section in the middle, that's how we would cut it, right? And then the same thing for the top, everything is going to get pulled into the middle because that's what's going to give us that dramatic shag shape. So really, if you wanted to, just to help keep yourself like in line, you can grab literally all of the hair that you're cutting in that same section, just so you can make sure you can see everything getting pulled into the center. At this point, you can even use the mirror. So even though you're working on the side, you can take a look at the mirror and make sure that this line is straight in the middle and that the section you're working on is getting fed into the middle. So now all those layers on top are going to help push the bangs forward. Which is why I said really the bangs, everything about the bangs is going to extend all the way to where the apex is. Because even though we cut like the little triangle in the front for the bangs, really everything on top is going to be technically part of the bangs. You can see I'm combing everything forward. It doesn't have to be styled this way, but this is how you're going to get more of a dramatic shag look. If they wanted to, they could still kind of comb their hair down to the side and then still kind of separate and section their bangs. But if maybe they're having problems with like their hairline, pushing the hair in weird directions, adding all of this weight on top from these layers is going to help push everything forward and out to the side. So I always get clients who they're really nervous or hesitant about getting a shag because maybe they have a really crazy like widow's peak or a cowlick on their hairline. And I always tell them, like, because of the way the shag is cut, all of that weight is going to overpower those weird hair growths on the hairline. How's it looking? Hope you can see that on screen.
Yes, it looks great. I'm all the way in Connecticut and it looks great. So I'm sure it looks better there.
Yay, perfect. I kind of have the light shining from the windows right now, so I can't see the phone that well.
But you can see the wispies coming off the sides and how they're flipping up and away from the face already. And you haven't even put any product or heat to it yet. So it's just going to look even better.
So, so now we're going to go ahead and start with the back. Again, I sectioned off everything under the occipital. And let's say there's like a specific length that they want to work with. At that point, right where the bone is, the occipital, that is going to be like a reference you would use for the length. So let's say like you cut the length, maybe they specifically wanted it like at a certain place, like on their chest or something. What I usually do, if it's already long enough to where I can like cut a lot of hair, I bring everything forward to their chest so they can see, you know, where I'm cutting it. They want it to rest here, so I'm going to cut it right at that point that they want. Then I'm going to bring everything back, making sure that it's you know, nice and evenly cut. I'm going to grab the hair that's at the occipital, and then I'll use that as my reference for when I do the rest of the layers in the back. So then I'll grab a vertical section going down and connect it to that length at the occipital. Right. In her case, it's already pretty long. The length is going to stay the same. So in this case specifically, everything is going to get directed to the layers we just did on top. If we were doing a really short shag, like I was mentioning earlier, then you would do the same thing, making sure you connect everything to the occipital first, and then connect everything to the bangs, because then that is going to help set up the length in the back. Kind of, it's like connecting the dots, basically. The dots being the different points of the skull. The occipital, the recession, the apex. the mastoid.
We have about 20 minutes, Alyssa.
Okay. So now I'm going to pull that section straight up. I'm going to grab hair that's at the apex. And now that's going to be our stationary guide. Making sure I see a drop. And then now we have our stationary guide at the apex. And now we're just going to start taking those layers and pivot them till we get to the end of that section. Okay, pulling it straight up. Make sure I can see my guide. Using my fingers to hold the tension. And I'm just cutting, not straight across, but just like I was showing earlier, the way I do with the blade. I'm doing the same thing with the shears.
And you're now cutting all that hair directly above where it lives. You're not over directing to the middle.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Cutting it where it lives, making sure that I'm just pivoting those sections to where they live, if that makes sense. Making sure I'm following those pie sections. So again, this is also going to help make sure I'm adding more internal layers and debulking at the same time. Because if I were to cut, so if I already know that her hair is pretty thick, and I already know that I'm going to have to go back in and debulk a little bit with thinning shears or debulking shears. Sorry, don't ever call them thinning shears. This is me just killing two birds with one stone. I'm making sure I'm creating that weight line, and cutting like this is going to help debulk as I'm cutting those sections. And because I connected everything to the apex that was already connected to the bangs, now I already know that those layers are going to be connected to the front. And I'm working my way to the last section. Is there any other questions at this point?
No, you've answered them as we've gone.
Perfect. An important thing to know when you're doing pie sections like this and pivoting around the apex is you're going to be moving along with it. So you want to make sure that you're always parallel with those subsections as you're going. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but as I'm getting to the end of that section, as I'm cutting, I'm starting to slightly over direct a little bit out. So I'm not really trying to cut in a straight line. When I pull everything up, instead of going straight across, those layers are gonna start to curve out a little bit. That's gonna help maintain more length as at the end as we're finishing. And that pie sectioning is going to help ensure that all the layers are going to be nice and connected all the way around.
It looks great.
Thank you. So now, when it comes to styling, just to help the bangs have a little more of that dramatic shape to it, I like using some flat clips, and I'll go right here where the recession is, and I'll just push it towards the center, clamp them close. And that's really going to help encourage the hair at the end to start flipping out. Use some Dream Coat from Color Wow. I'll make sure I eliminate as much frizz as possible. You do want to make sure you really saturate the hair if you were to ever use this stuff. Just a couple sprays isn't going to do shit. You really got to saturate it to get the best results. Okay, so while the hair kind of air dries where the bangs are, I'm going to start working on the front. I like to work my blow dry into sections. Usually I'll break up the back in about 3 sections, just depending on how thick your round brush is. That's usually how I kind of determine the size of my sections.
So we're going to stick with Alyssa while Alyssa styles here for about 10 minutes. And then we're going to end the class. But Alyssa, you're going to post the finished result on your page, correct?
Yes, I
And
will.
what is your page again?
My page is cathartic_vanity, CATHARTIC_vanity, like a bathroom vanity, I
All
guess.
right. Can't miss it.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we'll see.
See, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Great. So you're using the Quasar 2.0 and you have the large styling connection on it, correct? Yes. So what's great about our Quasar 2.0 is that it's lightweight. It's like less than 28 ounces. What I like to say is it gets hotter than a Dyson. It's more powerful than a Dyson, and it's about a third of the price. So it's really great. It's a brushless motor, very lightweight, very powerful, gets very hot, magnetic connections. So good stuff. So does anybody have any questions? Any questions about what Alyssa did? Sectioning, over direction, what tools she used, why? Anybody have any questions about anything else that's caliber related? We can answer those questions now. Alyssa also does a ton of barbering. So Alyssa's used the new Disruptor vector motor, version 2 vector motor clipper. Um, Pretty much anything you need to know, we can answer.
Yeah.
Lewis, when you say pie sectioning, what portion are you referring to? When Alyssa was cutting?
I don't have it. That's it.
So pie sectioning, Lewis, could be referred to as diagonal forward or diagonal backward. So envision, if you can, you have a circle, depending on what that circle looks like, and you're just splitting that circle into pie sections. So like you're sectioning or like you're cutting a piece of pie into a triangle shape. So that's what we mean by pie sectioning. So it's just cutting it into triangular sections, depending on where you are on the top of the head, the side of the head. It would just be referring to sections like this, depending on where that depending on where that sectioning is. Does that answer your question, Lewis? Awesome. So I'm going to give you a crude drawing. I'm going to turn my video back on. I'll give you a somewhat, um, I'm not a very good artist as far as when it comes to drawing, but when it comes to hair, it's another story, right? So Alyssa used pie shape. So this is the back of the head. This line across right here is the occipital. So everything below that was left out. Alyssa had split the head into two sections, a left and a right. Then she used pie sections or diagonal sections to split that section into pie shaped sections and then cut, pulling everything up. So I don't know if my horrible drawing helps out, but hopefully that'll help answer that question a little bit better. Alyssa, can you hear me? Alyssa can't hear me. Thank you to everybody who joined us. If you're not familiar with Caliber Tools, go check out our website. Alyssa,
Yes.
yes, yeah, I got you. So we're going to let you finish up. We're going to sign off, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Um.
Go ahead and just make sure you give us your Instagram page again and your information so people know where to find the finished look when you're done.
So my Instagram is cathartic_vanity. You can probably also look up Alternative Styles by Alyssa. Um, yeah, I'm gonna post the finished product in my stories shortly. So yeah, hopefully you guys can check that out soon. We're gonna wrap this up and I'm gonna try to mention all the products I'm gonna use as well.
Fantastic. Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on doing your first ever virtual education class. You did it, right? We made it through. And we will have this video posted to our YouTube page within the next 24 to 48 hours. So thank you, everyone who joined. Check out our website for a full list of all the classes to come. And Alyssa, thank you so much for joining today's class.
Thank you. Thank you for
Have a
having
great
me.
day.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye, everybody. Mhm. Not sure.